anybody to tell me how to make the cartoons. I just want to make the goddamn things. But that situation doesn't exist anymore in America. It's no longer a free country. It's communist or something. And you can only make cartoons that are politically correct, just like everything else. You can only make cars that are politically correct, and you can only make movies that are politically correct. The internet eliminates the need for distribution, which is one of the world's great evils. Anybody can get on the internet. Anybody can say what they want to say. Anybody can make what they want to make, put it on the internet, and the whole world can find it. If it's good, it'll be popular. If it's not good, it won't be popular. So only the really talented people, for the most part, will survive.
1991 saw the reinvention of Nickelodeon and the arrival of their own original cartoons, dubbed Nicktoons, providing more exclusive content for younger audiences to enjoy, and with a bunch of variety too. Rugrats was all about babies and toddlers getting into a bunch of silly shenanigans when their parents don't watch them. Doug was more of a slice-of-life cartoon, aiming for the tweens of that year going through similar problems as their titular protagonist. And then there was Ren and Stimpy, a chaotic, grotesque, and often hilarious antidote to the saturating children's programming of the era. In fact, at the time, this was considered the fan favorite of the trio, with its rebellious nature and envelope-pushing ideas, even gaining a huge controversial status from parents steering their children away from the show. It redefined cartoon sensibilities and became a cultural phenomenon, but this didn't last too long. You see, with its meteoric rise was matched by an equally dramatic fall, leaving a complex and controversial legacy, particularly for its creator, John Kricfalusi.
My name is John Kricfalusi, which is a pseudonym. I'm actually a fugitive from Canadian justice. I'm hiding out in the United States of America, feeding propaganda to children around the world through the form of the animated cartoon.
Also known as John K., this man is the mastermind behind the cult classic, but deep in that galaxy brain was a troubled, cynical, and at most times dangerous individual who will later tarnish his whole reputation at the drop of a dime. This is the story of a groundbreaking cartoon that reshaped animation and how its creator became both its architect and its undoing.
Hi, I'm John Kricfalusi. How I got started? I just drew stupid pictures when I was a little kid, and I continued to do so, and did it through school when I wasn't supposed to be doing it. And now I am supposed to be doing it, and so here I am.
The story begins in 1978, where John K. moves to Los Angeles, intending to become an animator. He found work in a production company, Filmation, and got a start on shows like Super Friends and the Tom and Jerry Comedy Hour. From there, he would work for Hanna-Barbera and Dick Entertainment, which he described as having some of the worst animation of all time. Although having to work on these cartoons took a toll on him, he was later saved by prolific adult animator Ralph Boschke, and joined his joint venture with John W. Hyde. Here is when John K. got his first big break with the team's most successful project, Mighty Mouse: The New Adventures.
For Mighty Mouse is here today.
It was a large departure from previous cartoons, since this was more creator-driven, something John K. was very passionate about. Kricfalusi directed 8 of the 26 episodes there, and his production team emphasized every step in the animation process, from outline to storyboard to layout to final animation. Kricfalusi would leave the show at the beginning of Season 2 to work on ABC's The New Adventures of Beanie and Cecil. This short-lived show garnered two major things that would make John K. stand out. First, a bunch of the production team and animators would end up working for John's own creative studio, Spumco. And second, this was the first instance of John's more eruptive nature. Upon long negotiations that delayed production with only 2 months left before its deadline, and tensions between John and ABC about the tone of the show, with ABC trying to keep it lighthearted and John K. really pushing for more shocking and offensive jokes, the show ended up getting cancelled with 6 episodes total. But this would only be a stepping stone into Kricfalusi's greatest achievement.
Now, on Nickelodeon News Flash, kids are attempting to build time machines so they can race through the week and go straight to Sunday, where they'll find Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy.
When Nickelodeon approached John K. for a new cartoon, John came up with 3 different shows. One of these shows happened to be a variety show called Your Game, with each variety cartoon parodying or spoofing a specific genre. Among these parodies were the cat and dog genre, which featured a cat and chihuahua as pets to one of the children. The vice president at the time, Vanessa Coffey, was not interested in any of John K.'s works, but did enjoy the characters of the cat and dog and asked to have them in their own series. And so, John K. got to work to produce a series pilot with his newfound company Spumco, and thus, Nickelodeon now had an original cartoon in the Ren and Stimpy Show. The series centers around our two main protagonists, Ren Hoek, a psychotic asthma hound chihuahua, and Stimson J-Cat, a dim-witted Manx cat, who find themselves in various roles across episodes, like salesmen, astronauts, classic storytime characters, you name it. The show extensively features off-color, absurdist humor with a little bit of slapstick mixed in as well. The series premiered on August 11, 1991, as part of the original Nicktoons alongside two other shows like Doug and Rugrats. Now, over time, out of the three Nicktoons, Rugrats stood out as the most popular, lasting longer than the other two, and spawning off tons of sequels and movies and loads of merchandise. But it was way different in the beginning of Nicktoons' lifespan, as Ren and Stimpy quickly garnered the highest ratings out of them, doubling viewership of the other Nicktoons for its first season, and later averaging 3 times more. It was good enough to order a second season for the cartoon. It quickly garnered a cult following at college campuses and received critical acclaim. Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, simply praised the show for its outrageousness, and Terry Thorin, who at the time was in charge of the animation studio for Rugrats, praised Kricfalusi for tapping into an audience that was a lot hipper than anybody thought.
Loved Ren and Stimpy. Yeah, I mean, it kicked so much ass, it was so influential, and it was like disgusting, hilarious, and sexual.
It's no wonder that Ren and Stimpy made wave to a newer influence of future cartoons. I mean, without it, we wouldn't get animated 90s classics like Beavis and Butthead, Cow and Chicken, and even SpongeBob. It was a cultural milestone for the 90s, but that wasn't without controversy though. Like I mentioned previously, John K. liked to push the envelope with his cartoons, and Ren and Stimpy was pretty vulgar and risque for some viewers. This show is known for its gross-out humor, leading the series to be criticized by parents who wouldn't allow their children to watch it. There are tons of segments on the show that reference religion, alcohol, and extreme violence. The staff at Spumco did not want to create an educational series, something that bothered Nickelodeon. With that, several episodes were either altered or cut entirely to meet Nickelodeon's practices. Stuff like the Pope in one episode being changed to the man in the pointy hat, and the infamous character of George Liquor being changed to George American. But we will definitely get to this character pretty soon.
Well, folks, it looks like Lump has the killer in the dreaded bat-handed tongue lock.
Now, John K. got along with Vanessa Coffey, the CEO of Nickelodeon at the time. He did trades with her, by making some crazy episodes for himself, by also making some heartwarming episodes to balance things out. But the relationship between John K. and Nickelodeon began to sour, as John's creative process and perfectionism started to overpass deadlines, and some employees felt pressured by the tensions of John's high standards and the anger by the executives over at Nickelodeon. The network kept denying approval of some of the series' more raunchier scenes, and John was getting more fed up with the development process that he decided to communicate with Nickelodeon over his lawyer. But things ultimately came to a close for John in 1992, when Nickelodeon decided to fire him from his own work, thinking it was creative differences and failure to meet production deadlines. However, John has concluded the reasoning for his firing was actually from a banned episode, Man's Best Friend. With its violent subject matter, one scene where Ren repeatedly beats George Liquor with an oar, and the protagonist getting rewarded with cigars was enough to call out John, and refusing to carry this episode on in its original form. Nickelodeon did offer John to be a consultant for the show, but he refused, stating he wasn't going to sell out.
I was shocked. I said, if you do this, you're going to be right back where you were before Spumco.
Since John's firing, the animation was now done by Games Animation, while Billy West, who voiced Stimpy, now took over John's voice role for Ren as well. This was a clear turning point for the show, with many fans and critics pointing at newer episodes being a step down from the standard of John K. and Spumco. The series ultimately ended on December 16, 1995, with an unaired episode airing on MTV in October 1996. The firing has significantly impacted John's career as a whole. While he remained a respected figure in animation circles for his artistic contributions, his actions and difficulty to work for made him an unapproachable man of power. He resented almost everyone who didn't follow along with him after he got let go, especially towards Billy West, who was now replacing him as the new voice of Ren, and felt stabbed in the back after what he calls a betrayal. If you want an in-depth, closer look on this strained friendship, their forced meetup at a 1995 episode of Howard Stern's show says it all.
Did you really expect Billy to leave?
Yeah.
You did. You did expect Billy to leave.
Yeah, well, he told me he was going to.
He did.
Oh, really? You backstabbing?
No. Let me
So
finish
Billy
the
said to
story.
you that he was going to leave.
Now, John's career didn't just vanish into thin air. He was still very active in the late 90s. Kricfalusi made tons of animated music videos from the likes of Bjork, Tenacious D, and Weird Al. He He also had a web cartoon on MSN in 1996 titled, well, that. He also did a lot of parodies of Hanna-Barbera cartoons for Adult Swim back in 2001. But two notable things happened for John's career, and both made a major flop on his impact. Let's take a look at the least damaging, The Ripping Friends, a cartoon John made for Fox Kids. Creating the idea way before the production of Ren and Stimpy, The Ripping Friends is about the world's manliest men who fight crime from their base. The show lasted for only 13 measly episodes, with some pointing to the huge production cost of $400,000 per episode. John was displeased with how the show was taking direction, and felt the show's supervisors were violating the name of Spumco in his eyes. Of course, with his narcissistic perfectionism, he considers the episodes he specifically worked on to be the best because they were experimental. But then there was the dreaded Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon. In 2002, Viacom, who owns Nickelodeon, offered John to produce a more extreme revamp of his classic show, aiming for a more mature audience, specifically males, and have it played on Spike TV. John had greater control of his contents and writing, and tried to make the revival much raunchier than before. Several alumni who worked on the original came to help out. However, the crew that stayed to work on Ren and Stimpy after John's firing did not return. Even Billy West, who voiced both characters, did not want to participate, as he thought it would damage his career. John still had his old habits, as he still had problems with meeting deadlines and budgetary limits, and also overworking his employees. Some consider the experience to be the worst job that they've ever had, as John would make unnecessary changes to add more shock value into stories. Only 3 episodes were ever aired on the network, while the other 3 being put into DVD. Now, unlike its predecessor, Adult Party Cartoon was universally panned by critics, audiences, and fans, as the new revival was just plain gross, and was a disastrous attempt to go above and beyond on the raunchy content, and is considered to be one of the worst animated series of all time. With this newfound hatred, John decided to shut down Spumco in 2005, followed by a lawsuit filed by Carbuncle Cartoons for failing to pay the studio for their services.
I mean, there's a reason why there's a difference from the original Ren and Stimpy to Ren and Stimpy Adult Party. It's because he lost a lot of the people that gave those characters heart and feeling and appeal.
The last thing John Gay probably did that was ever talked about was his 2017 Kickstarter cartoon, Cans Without Labels, starring the ever-infamous George Liquor, which, out of no surprise, was delayed multiple times, receiving negative reviews for its animation, humor, and John K's decision to release it following some very damning allegations against him. And this is where the mad genius of John K becomes the deranged freak that we know today.
I had always imagined what it would be like to meet him because I wanted to work for him so badly.
2 of the girls that were in charge of the library and the fan club, they brought me this big, thick binder from one particular fan named Robin Bird.
In March 2018, former Spumco employees Robin Bird and Katie Rice alleged that Kricfalusi sexually assaulted the two while they were underage. Bird told news outlets that she was in a sexual relationship with Kricfalusi in 1997 at age 16 and flew to California to live with him when she was 17. Rice said that Kricfalusi had flirted with her and made overly sexual comments towards her starting when she was 14, and sexually harassed her when she turned 18 and began working at his animation studio Spumco. Documents Rice and Bird had saved from over those years corroborate their stories, and several people who worked with Kricfalusi referred to his sexual harassment as an open secret in the animation industry. John K. was also reported to possess child pornography on his computer. Though the allegations were eventually reported to the police, they could neither arrest nor investigate Kricfalusi because the statutes of limitations had passed. In response, Kricfalusi's lawyer confirmed that for a brief time, 25 years ago, he had a 16-year-old girlfriend, but denied that John K.'s avid pursuit of Rice was sexual harassment or that he had ever possessed child pornography. John K. released an apology to the women and his fans for his behavior, which he said was motivated by a then undiagnosed bipolar disorder and ADHD, as well as poor impulse control. Bird and Rice criticized Kricfalusi's statement as a non-apology, in an attempt to deflect the blame. Due to the allegations, Kricfalusi decided to retire permanently in 2020 in the animation industry.
I think the 2 words, I'm sorry, would that be part of the
Oh, didn't I say that? I would definitely tell Robin I'm sorry. Really, really sorry. Because I didn't realize how affected she was until that article came out.
So, the main question remains. Should we separate art from the artist? In this case, should we appreciate the mastery of the Ren and Stimpy show without mentioning the evil lurking behind the scenes with John K. and his actions, both internal and external? Well, it's kind of hard to say. On one hand, without John, this new style of animation wouldn't make way to future popular cartoons, and wouldn't be hailed as a revolutionary animated series for the medium. But, in recent years, it seems as if no one wants to touch this tune anymore with the tarnished legacy of John's wrongdoings. Look, Kricfalusi's experience with Ren and Stimpy highlighted the tension between an uncompromising artistic vision and the demands of commercial television production. His inability to adhere to network schedules and budgets ultimately cost him control over his own creation. And after its firing, Kricfalusi struggled to replicate its success. Shows like The Ripping Friends and the controversial Ren and Stimpy Adult Party cartoon was an even bigger testament to Kricfalusi's continued struggles with production and content. And with the final nail in the coffin being Kricfalusi's misconduct allegations, the significant backlash effectively ended his mainstream career.
The show is the show. And there were a lot of creative people that contributed to it. So whether you like me or hate me, I would hope that that wouldn't color your enjoyment of the show.
I'm gonna make a weird comparison, but I think John K. is the animation industry's version of Kanye West. A highly influential figure in their respective space that has made tons of well-acclaimed projects, but with very controversial statements and actions, their whole limelight has quickly faded away. John K. was riding waves in the early 90s. He birthed a cult classic and made a cultural shockwave. But the ultimate fall was when his genius side met his chaos side, and his perfectionism led to missed deadlines and clashes with Nickelodeon. He refused to compromise, often holding up production to maintain his vision, leading to his firing and fallout. Ren and Stimpy was a lightning bolt in a bottle. Wild, hilarious, and deeply flawed. John Kricfalusi's vision changed animation forever, but his personal demons cast a long shadow. Today, the show is both celebrated and scrutinized, a reminder that behind every masterpiece may lie a messy, human story.
Oh, Stimpy. I'm so ashamed.
The story of Ren and Stimpy is a micronism of artistic genius clashing with industry realities. The show's influence on animation is undeniable, paving the way for more creator-driven and subversive cartoons. However, the trajectory of its creator John Kricfalusi serves as a stark reminder of how personal actions and professional conduct can ultimately overshadow artistic achievements. The legacy of Ren and Stimpy remains complex, a groundbreaking, influential series forever tied to the controversial figure who brought it to life. But the man John Kricfalusi remains as a brilliant, broken, and impossible to ignore figure who might have changed animation in a new direction, but will now succumb to his new direction as a failed animator and the man responsible for creating an iconic duo and destroying them completely.